Today is one of the presentations that's the most fun for me. I really like it. It takes a lot of work to prepare for it, and I don't know how good I am at it, but it's fun to try to present. It's titled Church History from the Big Bang to the Book of Common Prayer in less than 60 minutes. The reason that I present this, and it's a high altitude, and I'm not an expert in anything that I'm going to talk about today. So all of your follow-up questions, we'll have to Google the answers to, right? The reason I present this is that a few years ago, it just really struck me. I'm probably late to the game. This probably already occurred to you. That we generally teach church history as a history of the last 2,000 years. At best, we teach church history as a history of the last 3,000 to 5,000 years. But that doesn't even come close to the history of the church for people who believe that our God is the God of all creation. And that all creation, in a manner of speaking, that's not entirely simply poetry. I mean, there's a theological depth to this. The church is the whole universe. There is no place that God is not. In fact, one of our contemplative teachers, Martin Laird, says, God doesn't know how to be absent. So God is totally immanent in all things. So then the challenge before us is, well, find me the corner of creation that's absent of God, that's not kind of shot through with, I might say, churchiness. So with that sort of opening, then I get to thinking, well, let's talk about it. Let's look at the high points for the last 14 billion years, all the way up to this moment, and see what happens to our minds as they grow and our hearts as they might grow as we look at our own church lives through a much, much bigger lens. So what I do is I start with the Big Bang, and I'm going to give an outline. A lot of you studied science. You're better at this than me. A lot of you studied history. You're better at this than me. I'll concede all margins. Where I say a number and you say he's 500 years off or 500 million years off, I'll concede it all. You're right. I'm not trying to be precise, but to get a broad overview. And the end of it, I want us to walk out that door a little more curious and a little more situated in a bigger frame, a little more patient and relaxed with our part in what I'm going to call the universal becoming. So you've got a little handout, and it gives the biggest outline. It's also a place for you to make notes should you so desire. It's just your little scrap paper. If you turn over on the back of the outline, I want to get us situated just as a point of reference. So the universe burst into being with a big bang 13.8 billion years ago. This is straight up science at this point. It's not even the theory of the Big Bang. It's the Big Bang. So just to get us situated, 500 years, I can't even say this, y'all, is that percentage of 14 billion. So for me as a 49-year-old man, 500 years is like, well, that's a heck of a long time. No, it's nothing compared relatively. 2,000 years, Jesus was born 2,000 years again. Again, I'm just trying to get us a frame of reference. I can't even say that percentage. Is that 6 zeros, then the 1 4 after the decimal percent of 14 billion? And then even 100,000 years, which in human history, that's unimaginable for a 49-year-old or however old you are to conceive of 100,000. No, not in real time. Well, it's the tiniest percentage of the whole. So does that kind of get us a little bit of a frame of reference? History is a lot longer and bigger frame than we mostly realize when we're talking about church history. Okay, so to start at the beginning, I'm going to start in a theological place. I'm going to start with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So this is God as we theologically sort of name God in the Christian tradition. The Son is the manifesting energy or current of the Holy Trinity. The Christ current. So God showing up through the Christ current of the Holy Trinity is the dawn of creation 14 billion years ago. So we sometimes say Christ is not Jesus' last name. Christ is the energy or the current of the Godhead of Trinity showing up as all creation, which doesn't mean that Robbie and I are Jesus Christ. Pam and Kristen can attest to that. Huh? We're not the numerical equivalent of the second person of the Trinity. But you can't tease God out of us and still have us. God dwells within us. That's the same with the trees, the moon, the stars. So that's our starting place. That all creation is God showing up as all creation. This is not pantheism. In other words, Robbie and I and the tree outside are not the numerical equivalent of God. It's commonly referred to as panentheism, God in all things. So that's our starting place. So poetically, sometimes we say before the Big Bang. Neither theology nor science has an answer to what was before the Big Bang. But poetically, we sometimes say the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, is this dynamism of love. And 13.8 billion years ago, love overflowed the family of God, that is Trinity, and creation began. That's a poetic rendering of the beginning. Jesuit priest and paleontologist, so Christian and scientist, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, has this statement, and it's on your handout there. I'm just going to read it to you, and then this will be the basis for our going forward, and it's sort of my thesis. So Teilhard de Chardin lives at roughly the time of Einstein, so late 19th century, early 20th century. Magnificent teacher, priest, and scientist. And he wrote kind of an extended poem called The Hymn of the Universe. And in this poem, he imagines addressing God, and he says this: God, once upon a time, men took into your temple the first fruits of their harvest. And our minds can immediately go to the Old Testament and the sacrificial offering systems. That sort of makes sense? Once upon a time, men, we're more contemporary, we could say men and women, took into your temple the first fruits of their harvest, the flower of their flocks. But the offering you really want, O God, the offering you mysteriously need. Now we can stop there and say, what need? What does God need? No, God's in a relationship. God does have needs. Just like if I'm in a relationship with my wife, Kristen. If I don't realize that there's needs, like this is a two-way street. God definitely has needs. So Teilhard articulates it like this: the offering you mysteriously need every day to appease your hunger, to slake your thirst, is nothing less than the growth of the world born ever onwards in the stream of universal becoming. So if you have a dog or a child, or you're a godparent to a little child, or you have just planted a new tree in your backyard, and I said you only get to use one word to describe your hope for that little thing or that little tree, you'll offer me one word. You'll say, I hope she grows. This is the universal becoming. So Teilhard says, God's great hunger, the thing He mysteriously needs, is for us to be a part of the growth, the universal becoming, he puts it poetically, that has been ongoing through the creation technique of evolution for 14 billion years. So here we go. Before the Big Bang, so right before 13.8 billion years ago, all the matter, space, and energy in the known universe, if you listen to this, it'll blow your mind. Right before the Big Bang, all the matter, space, and energy in the known universe was contained in a volume 1/trillionth the size of the period at the end of the sentence that I have just spoken. That's fabulous quote. It's a scientific truth. Neil deGrasse Tyson wrote that in his book, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. So before this, everything that is, if just the stuff in this room was in space the size, 1 trillionth the size of the period at the end of this sentence, that'd be enough to blow your mind, right? 1 trillionth the size of the tiny little dot. But everything in the known universe, all the space, time, and energy in the known universe was contained in a volume 1 trillionth the size of the period, that's probably big, at the end of this sentence. The Big Bang happens, and expansion and evolution begin. For the first tiny little season of the universe, so the smallest fraction of a second, the entire universe is one big, hot, soupy mess of hydrogen. Mostly by a wide margin, hydrogen with a little bit of helium and even a smaller amount of lithium. Now, check this out. All the hydrogen that is in existence today, that was, is, and ever will be, all the hydrogen was created at the Big Bang. Your body consists of, by volume, about 10% hydrogen. Literally. You're sitting, take the hydrogen out of your body, it's not going to go well for you. Your body consists by volume of about 10% hydrogen. All of the hydrogen in your body was created 13.8 billion years ago in the Big Bang. So when you poetically hear someone say, "We are stardust," y'all wouldn't do this, you're more charitable than I am, but someone says, "We are stardust," and you sort of roll your eyes and here's another one. It's science. It's absolutely true. For 1 billion years, the universe expands and cools, and massive amounts of matter concentrate and collect in galaxies. There are about 100 billion galaxies, each containing about 100 billion stars. This is for about the first billion years. These stars are super hot. We call them supernovas. They explode. They're young. They explode. They're burning really hot. And they scatter, this is another quote, they scatter their chemically enriched nutrient guts, which contain the elements necessary for life all over the universe. So everything on the periodic table that is the major component parts of your body are literally stardust from these stars that burn really hot in the early season of life in the universe, scatter all over. And that's why we have Laura Sparks. This goes on for about 9 billion years. And then on the outskirts of the universe, in an ordinary galaxy called the Milky Way, our sun was born. The elements necessary coalesce, and our sun was born about 5 billion years ago. Remember where we started? We're in church. 5 billion years ago, it would have been a little different. The order of service was a little different. But the entire universe is the church, this thing that God has made. About 4.5 billion years ago, the necessary elements coalesce and the earth forms. This is a big deal for us. We've enjoyed being here. We're going to be here a little while longer. About 3.6 billion years ago, so this is the first Big Bang, right? 13.8 billion years ago. About 3.6 billion years ago, we get on planet Earth what we refer to, some of us do, as the second Big Bang. Something comes out of nothing. We really don't, there's a lot of theories and a lot of work, and one day I think we will figure this out, but we really don't, there's a lot of mystery around the second Big Bang. Life forms. Big communities of bacteria, the first life on planet Earth, are all over planet Earth. Now, if we could time travel, and we can't, I know. If we could, and we could go back, it's like, oh man, that'd be cool. Let's go check out the second Big Bang. Let's go back, planet Earth 3.6 billion years ago. We'd have to take something with us or it wouldn't be a good trip. And that thing we'd have to take with us is oxygen. In the early stages of life on the earth, there was no oxygen. Our atmosphere was essentially devoid of oxygen. Then 2.4 billion years ago. Now, I get impatient about time. I have teenagers, where are your shoes? What? We're going to the store, you're in the car, and your shoe, I get impatient about time. Anybody living in this universe? Okay. God does not get impatient about time. God is as patient could be. A lot of human beings get kind of uppity and get thinking humanity is the real crown jewel of the universe and of creation. And I don't necessarily disagree. And I think we are the apple of God's eye. But He sure did wait a long time. There's a lot going on with God before He gets to even our little island home. And then to life on our island home in little communities of bacteria. And then to sort of beginning to oxygenate. I don't think that's a word, but to make enough oxygen in the atmosphere that we might live. So 2.4 billion years ago, there's this great little chapter in the history of the earth called the Great Oxidation Event. And tiny little bacteria called cyanobacteria. They're little like blue-green looking algae things. They're not algae, they're little bacteria. They begin for the first time on planet Earth to release oxygen in such a way that it stores itself in the atmosphere. So they're producing surplus oxygen. 2.4 billion years ago, the GOE. It's still not enough oxygen to support life, but it's a beginning. It goes on for quite a while. There's this great season that follows that 1.8 billion years ago, and for about 1 billion years, called the Boring Billion. When I was a little boy on Sunday afternoons, my dad was a priest. I thought that was the boring, what do you do when it's the boring billion? Nothing much happened. I'm a contemplative. I like to say this was God's very long centering prayer sit. Nothing much happened. Oxygen accumulated in the atmosphere over 1 billion years. The universal becoming. I'm anxious and worried about the November election. Will it just come, please, Jesus, and be over? What is that, 6 months from now? 1 billion years. Y'all, we're not here to be scared and worried and anxious. We're made in the image of our Creator, who hung around for 1 billion years while enough oxygen pushed itself into our atmosphere so we can have this conversation. About 800 million years ago, another oxidation event happens. It's called the NOE. That's the acronym. Don't ask me to pronounce the N. I cannot, but you can Google it. Try it out for yourself. 800 million years ago, after this next sort of dump of oxygen, we now are up to enough oxygen in the atmosphere that can sustain life as we know it today.